I warned you that this was gonna be a lot of maths. Well, interpretive maths? Anyway, unfortunately, I'm also going to have to make a couple of assumptions. How would we calculate the flattening of our planet? Well, flattening is caused in large parts by, as my physics teacher always stressed, inertial centrifugal force. So turns out our physicists already have derived a formula to predict planetary flattening based on how fast the planet rotates and something called the Darwin-Rado relation. I do have the rotation rate now, but what is the Darwin-Rado relation? Formally, that's the relationship between the mass distribution of a planet and several other factors. To aggressively oversimplify though, the value I'm going to use describes the distribution of mass within the planet. It's similar to the regular moment of inertia. If the mass is more on the outside, then it's harder to spin up and easier when the mass is closer to the center. In real cases, at least for rocky planets like Earth is one, that value would be calculated from the rotation rate and the geodesic flattening. That's the value I wanted to calculate here. Alright, I'm gonna estimate. To do that, I've picked some limits and references. The upper limit is the theoretically calculated value for a uniformly dense object. That's basically the weight is on the outside constellation that we think is naturally possible. For the lower limit, I've picked a measurement for gas giants, which are, to my knowledge, the most extreme objects in terms of concentration of mass. Other than black holes, but gravity makes space act a little bit like time near black holes, so let's not think about those right now. And of course, as reference, Earth and Mars, which, as we've established, are the only planets in our solar system that spin a little bit like Earth. Considering that the limits give me two directions to move towards, I can kind of start with Earth's value and just step up or down based on what I've planned for my planets. For the smaller of the two, I have two plans already. That one has vast continental scale caverns beneath its biggest continents. Those are very close to the surface though, so I'd guess it resembles a gas giant more than a uniform sphere, making its relation slightly lower. There is also a plot point that kind of implies that its core is a good bit hotter than that of Earth. That makes its core more liquidy and thus allows heavier elements to fall inwards more quickly. That too concentrates its mass in its center, making the relation slightly lower. And I don't actually have that much planned for the bigger planet yet. What I have already decided upon is that it has fewer oceans than Earth. And I'm thinking about giving its surface some metallic debris from the original formation, but that's not directly inspiring a story. For now I just... Wait, no. That's not quite right. For the debris to be relevant on a planetary scale, it would have to be wastes of steel, rusted mountains and plains eroded into wastes of wrought iron and slag, ravaged by storms of red dusts, coasts that go green unpredictably as fish leave them or die poisoned. See, this is why I love world building. That is some metal-ass environment. Pun intended, but only in retrospect. Where the other planet is centrally condensed, large metallic deposits would likely skew the mass distribution to the outside, so its value is gonna be slightly higher than that of Earth. Now there is a third thing, meaning a problem. That formula calls for the equatorial radius. I thought I had the equatorial radius, or at least a specific radius at a specific latitude that I'd be able to splice in there with some forbidden maths. But I calculated all my numbers based on Earth's standard gravity, which is apparently not a value chosen on some easy-to-use mathematical standard. It's basically a somewhat random measurement. So this introduces an additional error of 0.5%, which in a couple of my calculations will compound to a larger error. But, well, against the advice of my physics teachers, I didn't actually study astrophysics, I studied management, so let's solve this the management way, by defining the error as inherently acceptable. Yeah, I'm not gonna calculate error ranges for this. Very disappointing, I know, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna have to define this random measurement as the equatorial gravity. I think that should only really mess with the density then. Aight, now before I calculate the actual flattening, do me a favor and try that newfangled hype button. I'm not sure what that does, but it seems like it would help me. Thanks. You can also subscribe if you just want to see the next video as well. Aight, back to our formula. Don't worry, I'm just gonna skim this real quick. I've had to resolve the formula, of course, plug the whole thing into my tables, and this is barely flattened at all. 22 kilometers of extra radius on the equator. That's, I think, 3 whole Mount Everests? Like, sounds like a lot, but it's 22 kilometers against 6,000 kilometers. That's basically nothing. Yeah, turns out rocky planets do be very round. For reference, I've also calculated all the basic values for Earth based on this flattening, and I think anyone less insane than me should probably just assume a flattening of 0. It is technically more accurate though, so I guess I'm happy with it. I did the same with my planets, recalculate the basic values I mean. Only really minor changes to values from episode 1. But that is all I have for today though. Okay, bye!